Rome, 64 AD. The Emperor Nero stands in the imperial mint and watches workers press fresh denarii, silver coins stamped with his own face. The coins look identical to yesterday's. The weight feels the same in the hand. But Nero has quietly ordered the silver content reduced from roughly 90% to about 90%, and then again. Each batch of metal stretches a little further. Each coin funds another legion, another palace, another year of political peace bought on borrowed time. The merchants do not know yet. The soldiers do not know yet. But the mint knows. And the ledger, as it always does, will eventually tell the truth. This is where it always begins, not with a battle lost, not with a barbarian at the gate, but with a quiet decision made inside a building most citizens will never enter. 7 currencies. 7 governments. 7 moments when the hand of the state reached into the monetary system and triggered a collapse that could not be reversed. The mechanism is always the same: political spending needs outpace fiscal capacity, the treasury runs short, and the mint becomes the last resort. By the time you finish this video, you will be able to read the warning signs yourself, not as prophecy, not as fear, but as pattern recognition built from 2,000 years of evidence. We begin at number 7. Number 7. The Roman denarius. We are already in that mint in 64 AD. Nero's debasement was not a single dramatic act, it was a slow technical adjustment. The denarius under Augustus had been minted at roughly 95% silver. Nero trimmed it to about 90%. His successors trimmed further. By the reign of Gallienus in the 260s AD, the denarius contained approximately 2 to 5% silver, effectively a bronze coin with a silver wash so thin it wore off in a season. Roman merchants began pricing goods in terms of gold or in kind. Soldiers demanded pay in something real. The government's response to the resulting inflation was to issue more coins. The cycle tightened on itself. The mechanism here is what economists call seigniorage, the profit a government captures by issuing currency worth more than it costs to produce. The profit is real, once. But once the public catches on, trust evaporates faster than the silver itself. The denarius did not die in a day. It died across 2 centuries of small decisions, each one individually defensible, collectively catastrophic. Number 6. The Byzantine Hyperpyron. Constantinople lasted 1,000 years after Rome fell, and it did so partly on the strength of a stable gold coin, the solidus, and its later form, the hyperpyron. Foreign merchants called Byzantine gold the dollar of the medieval Mediterranean. But by the 11th century, the empire faced military pressure on every border and a court that had grown structurally dependent on expensive political patronage. Emperor Nicephorus III and his predecessors began reducing the gold content of the hyperpyron, from near purity to roughly 30% gold by the late 12th century under the Angeloi dynasty. Within decades, Italian merchants, Venetians and Genoese stopped accepting Byzantine coin at face value and began demanding a discount. When a foreign creditor demands a discount on your currency, the reserve status is already gone. The Byzantine economy fractured into a patchwork of foreign-denominated trade. The political collapse that followed the Fourth Crusade in 1204 had monetary roots that stretched back a century before the First Crusader knocked on the city's walls. Number 5. The Spanish vellon. Spain in the 16th century was the richest empire in the world by some measures, drowning in silver from Potosi in modern Bolivia. At peak production, that single mountain supplied perhaps 60% of the world's silver. And yet by 1600, Spain was in fiscal crisis. The silver that poured in also poured out, to pay for wars in the Netherlands, in the Mediterranean, across the globe. When the silver flows slowed, the Spanish crown turned to the vellon, a copper coin legally declared equivalent to silver. Between 1599 and 1626, the crown minted vellon on a massive scale, effectively printing copper-backed promises. Spanish price levels roughly doubled in some regions within a generation. Merchants hoarded silver and spent copper. The empire that had more silver than any state in history still managed to find the mint and ruin it. The lesson is not about the metal, it is about the gap between what a government spends and what it actually collects. Silver or copper, the mechanism is identical. Number 4. The French lever under John Law. In 1716, a Scottish financier named John Law persuaded the regent of France to let him establish a bank that could issue paper notes backed by the assets of a colonial trading company, the Mississippi Company. For a moment, it worked magnificently. The notes circulated, the stock price rose, and France felt rich. At the peak in 1720, the Mississippi Company's implied market value exceeded the entire productive wealth of France by a wide margin. Law's bank issued more and more notes to meet demand and to fund the crown's debts. When a handful of large holders began converting notes to coin and quietly moving the coin out of France, confidence cracked. The conversion window was closed by royal decree, which confirmed every fear. The lever collapsed. John Law fled France in a carriage, reportedly disguised. The modern reader should pause here. When a government closes the conversion window, it is not protecting the currency. It is confirming that the currency cannot defend itself. Which empire do you think we are most like right now? Tell me below. Number 3. The Continental Dollar. Not worth a continental became an American idiom so common that most people who use it today do not know it refers to a currency. The Continental Congress, lacking the power to tax and fighting a war against the most powerful military on earth, did the only thing available. It printed paper dollars, continentals, with no hard backing, on the promise that the new republic would eventually make good. By 1779, roughly 200 million continentals had been issued. By 1781, it took several hundred continental dollars to purchase $1 worth of gold coin. The Congress formally abandoned the currency. A new nation had debased its money before it had finished founding itself. The mechanism was not malice, it was desperation. And desperation, as a monetary force, is indistinguishable from malice in its effects on the ledger. Number 2. The Weimar paper mark. Most people know the image, a wheelbarrow of banknotes to buy a loaf of bread. But the mechanism is less commonly understood. Germany entered World War I by suspending the gold convertibility of the mark in 1914. It financed the war almost entirely through debt and newly printed money, expecting to pay it all back with reparations extracted from the defeated Allies. When Germany lost and faced reparations demands instead, the equivalent of roughly 3 times its annual national income under the Treaty of Versailles, the printing press became the only answer the government could find. By November 1923, the exchange rate reached approximately 4.2 trillion marks to $1. Businesses could not price goods. Savings held in marks became worthless in weeks. Workers demanded daily wages paid at noon so they could spend the money before afternoon prices rose. The social devastation of the Weimar hyperinflation is historically documented as a contributing factor to the political instability that followed in the 1930s. The warning sign, visible in retrospect, was simple: the moment a government finances a war primarily through money creation rather than taxation or genuine borrowing from savings, the terminal sequence has begun. The question is only how long it takes to complete. Number 1. The British pound sterling as reserve currency. This case is the most instructive precisely because it did not involve hyperinflation. It did not involve wheelbarrows. It was a slow, structural handover, and it is the one that most closely describes what a reserve currency decline actually looks like from inside. In 1900, the pound sterling was the world's dominant reserve currency, anchoring global trade and credit. Britain financed 2 world wars, accumulated enormous debt. By 1945, British national debt exceeded 250% of GDP, and simultaneously began losing the industrial and commercial dominance that had made the pound credible. The dollar, backed by American productive capacity and gold reserves, stepped into the vacuum. By the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, the dollar was formally installed as the global reserve currency. The pound did not die. It still exists. But the reserve privilege, the ability to borrow cheaply, to settle trade in your own currency, to export inflation, transferred across the Atlantic. That transfer took roughly 4 decades. It was almost invisible to the people living through it. And here is the false belief that every great power holds in this stage: they believe that reserve status is a reward for past achievement, locked in permanently, like a title of nobility. It is not. It is a daily vote of confidence cast by every creditor, every trading partner, every central bank that chooses to hold your currency over alternatives. The moment that vote begins quietly shifting, not announced, not dramatic, just a slow reallocation of reserves, the cycle has entered its final stage. The warning signs are readable: rising debt-to-GDP ratios sustained over decades, persistent trade deficits, a widening gap between what the government spends and what it raises, and most critically, the moment when the central bank becomes the primary buyer of government debt because the private market will not absorb it at acceptable yields. Think of it as a borrowed candle. You can light your house with someone else's candle for years. It burns bright. But the wax belongs to the lender, not to you. And candles, no matter whose face is stamped on the side, always burn down. Every great power believed it was different. The ledger disagreed. Subscribe, one collapse decoded at a time.